really remember about Mr. Ken. I grew up in the church where he was, at that time, may have been a deacon. He was a leader in our church, and his wife taught me in school, taught me in Sunday school. Mr. Lane was a faithful man in our church, faithful to his wife, faithful to his kids. He owned a business, hired a lot of teenage help from the church. And more than he was just paying them, and teaching them how to paint, and there's probably 200 guys that know how to paint thanks to Ken Lane. He spent time encouraging them. Some of them went on to full-time Christian ministry. Most of them were just godly men who, that was their first job, working with Mr. Ken. Morgan Wright, who leads the Monday Night Men's Group, he worked for Mr. Ken as a painter. So many of the guys that I grew up looking to, they worked for Mr. Ken or spent time with him. I read it this week, and it stuck out to me. It was a youth pastor sharing that he felt like the most impactful moments he had with teenagers were not when he was sharing a sermon at their youth night, but when he would take one out to lunch and ask them about their lives. And Mr. Ken did that all the time, whether it was taking me fishing, other guys fishing, or hiring him to paint. He didn't just pay them to paint. He would talk about the Lord. And he doesn't look it, because he looks exactly the same as he did when I was a teenager. But he has spent 30, 40, 50 years now investing in young men and now grown men. And we wanted him to share this morning because this is what we hope to do with all of our lives. I don't just want you to do life. I don't want you to just go through the motions and get involved in church. The Bible calls us to take what we have received, our faith, and pass it on to the next generation. And that certainly happens in Sunday morning. It also happens at small group, but it also happens in the margins, at work, and on a fishing boat, and on a basketball court, and in all the places we spend our time. So, Mr. Ken, thank you for all you've done for me and Pastor Kevin. Share with us this morning, brother.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. Thank you, fellas. I'm not here to glorify myself. I am not. I believe me, I'm the bottom guy on the totem pole, and I'm here to glorify the Lord Jesus Christ for what he's done for me. But I tell you, I had a pretty rough start when I was a young man. Most of you young boys, young men in here this morning, if you've got a godly father and a godly mother, you've got a real treasure. I did not come from a home that was grounded, if you will. I came from a broken family, and my mom and dad were separated. I was 4 years old. My brother was 6. So we did not have, a close relationship with our parents. And so, anyway, it was a pretty rough start when I was a young fella. And I grew up in Ocean View, down on First View Street. And we lived there and got in all kind of mischief and some funny things that we did to the sailors when they were coming back from browsing around down Ocean View at night. We would take black thread and tie it across the trees at their eye level. And our apartment, we lived in a little apartment upstairs, and we could see these sailors when they get wrapped up in that string, and they were half gassed up anyway, and they would cuss and fuss, and my brother and I would just laugh at those guys trying to get out of that string. Some of the things we got into is mischief, but we would pick up bottles back in the day, and you could get 3 cents for a bottle. You could take them to the grocery store, and they'd give you 3 cents for them. Some of you older fellows might remember those days. But we would always find some way to make a few pennies, And started fishing when I was just a young kid. My grandfather took me fishing on his little rowboat in Nag's Head behind Jockey Ridge in the Sound Side. And my brother and I would go out there with my grandfather, and he'd row out there. And he didn't have GPS, none of that stuff. He just knew where to go by sighting things on the beach and knowing exactly where to put the boat. No anchor, a cinder block for an anchor, and we'd stop right there, and we would bail in speckled trout, with a hand line, no rod and reels. We had a hand line back in the day. And that was my introduction to going fishing. But when I was a young kid, I knew nothing about Christ. My family was a broken home. We never went to church. I didn't know anything about the Lord. And so we pretty much raised ourselves. My father got the custody of my brother and I, if you can imagine that, instead of my mother. And my dad worked all the time in V88 at Naval Air Station. He was a painter. And man, I said, I'll never be a painter. Never want nothing to do with it. He would come home every day and smell like lacquer thinner, and bar sol and different chemicals. And that's not for me. I'm not doing that. So anyway, my dad had no idea what to do with two boys. He had no clue how to raise two kids. He wasn't a believer. He had no inclination of what he was doing. So my brother and I pretty much raised ourselves. I mean, went to Northside Junior High School and went to Ocean View Elementary School. We washed our own clothes, ironed our own clothes. If we got something to eat, we cooked it ourselves. I lived on fish sticks and French fries for about 5 years, and it was not good. Didn't have a good home bringing. We would leave in the morning in the summertime, and when we got back, my dad didn't know when we came back. He wasn't home anyway. So we just pretty much ran the streets. And when you run in the streets, you run into trouble. Well, I got a job, and I was working with Dixon and Van Landscaping Company. I was about 15 years old, but I was tall, very skinny guy. I was very thin. Can you hear me okay? I keep moving the mic. But anyway, I was very thin, but I was tall, and I probably looked a little older than I really was. So I got a job, and they worked me like a slave. I'm telling you, man, they worked me. But it was good for me because I developed a little bit of muscle, a little bit of arm strength, And as time went on, I got another job, and I managed to really fall in love with a young girl. She was a pretty girl. And my brother, he was 2 years older than I was, and he had a car, and I didn't. And I really, really fell in love with this girl. I mean, I was young, yeah, but still, I saw my brother one day with her in the car riding down Tidewater Drive with my girlfriend. Man, that broke my heart. I'm still mad at my brother for that. And that was 60 years ago. And anyway, I decided then I was going to get me a car. Well, I finally got me a 57 Plymouth Belvedere two-door. And I didn't build it, but a friend of mine, I paid him to rebuild the engine. It was a 318, and he built the motor in it, and it was a good-looking car. Well, now, I'm going to tell you some things that I wouldn't tell my church because they probably wouldn't let me come back. I'm telling you this because I'm giving God the glory for what He done in my life because God's grace is way out there. His grace is far beyond anything we can imagine. That's why the world's still standing today, because of His grace. And anyway, a friend of mine and I got that 57 Plymouth, and we went to Nag's Head and went to Manio and picked up a couple of girls and wanted to go to a dance back at the casino in Nag's Head. And some of you older guys know where that was. Anyway, we were just troublemakers. And so the girl said, well, we can go if you go ask my dad. So, well, where's your dad? Well, their dad was back in the woods finding their dogs, their hunting dogs. It was in the fall of the year. And they were looking for their dogs to go hunting. They were gathering their dogs up. Anyway, she said, my dad's down this road and down this road and down this road. We'll go find him. So I'm taking off with that 57 Plymouth, and we're flying down these dirt roads with the dirt coming up behind us, 12 foot high, and we're looking for her dad. And the next thing I know, I lose control of that car, and it starts flipping and turning over and turning over and turning over. And it was not good. I tore that 57 Plymouth all to pieces. Beautiful car, just tore it up. Somehow those two girls got out, but my friend was in the back windshield in the back of the car, and there was a canal right there, and there was a little pine sapling holding that car up, and I crawled back in there and got him out, and God spared us, and I came home with 4 tires from that car. And my dad said, where's your car? And I said, it's in the woods. And I told him what happened, and he just shook his head, That's number one, God spared me. And I did not know how close I came to death that day, or that night. It was in the evening. Well, time went on, and I'm still hard-headed. I don't know anything about God. Nobody shared Christ with me. But where we lived in Ocean View, there were 2 ladies lived downstairs, and they were praying for my brother and I. Their husbands were in the military. And I didn't know this, but they were praying for us, two boys without Christ and a father that was an alcoholic drunk, by the way. And so time went on, and the clock kept ticking and kept ticking, and I got in a friend's car, and we were going down Tidewater Drive, and it was a 49 Buick with a straight 8 in it, an engine, real long straight 8. And then you guys know what a straight 8 looks like? A big, long motor. And that thing, it wasn't fast on takeoff, but you get it going, and that thing there's just no end to the speed. So he let me drive, and I'm a young kid, I'm 15 years old here, and I'm driving that car down Tidewater Drive, going through them curves, and we lost control of that car. And it just started spinning around in that road. And number two, God saved my life that time. That's twice he saved me. So by this time, I had met my wife, Sandy. She skated professionally at the roller skating rink in Ward's Corner at the time. I think it was called the Olympic Roller Skating Rink or something like that. Anyway, her uncle owned it, and she skated. And they had sock hops on a Saturday night. You skated from 6 to 9, and from 9 to 12, they had a sock hop, and Roger Clark was the DJ. And Sandy worked in the concession stand for her uncle, and she skated professionally. She was a very, very good skater. This was roller skating. And everything that they do on ice, they can do with roller skates. They're just heavier. And so I used to watch her go around the skating rink, and she skated. I'm telling you, she probably skated after school. She would go there after school, and she would skate till about 9 o'clock at night every day. So obviously she developed some very beautiful legs. And so I saw this girl going around the skating rink, and I said, man, that girl's really got some nice legs. I'm not being vulgar. I'm just telling you what I saw. And so small skating skirts. And so I said, I know who you are. And I told her to come here. I said, I think I know who you are. And she looked at me. She said, I don't think so. Real sarcastic. She didn't want anything to do with me. I wasn't her type of guy. But anyway, she skated a little bit more, and I said, come here, I know who you are. Don't you live down the street from a girl named Sue? And she said, yes, I do. Well, she felt bad then because I told her I knew who she was. But anyway, we started going out and dating each other and so forth and so on. Well, I got permission from my dad to get married. We were married at 16 years old. She was a senior in high school, and man, I did not like school. But guys, I'm telling you, boys, stay in school because it really helps you in the end. I can tell you that for sure. I regret that I did not finish school, but I couldn't stay at home. It wasn't a good thing for me to stay at home. My father was a drunk, and when I was 15, I left home. And I didn't know where I was going, but I finally got a $35 bus ticket to Peoria, Illinois when I was 15 years old to go live with my mother. And that was even worse, believe me. So I was out of control and going downhill. I got in trouble in Illinois, and I finally begged my brother to come get me. And my brother him and another guy came all the way to Peoria, Illinois, and picked me up and brought me back home, which I was so glad to get back. But I never went back home. And so I stayed around with friends and hung around, and I tell you that to tell you this. Sandy and I, we did get married. She got permission from her mom, and we went to Jacksonville, Florida, and got married when we were 16. And she got out of high school. And now I got a wife to feed and me to feed, so I had to get a little bit better job. And I was making a monstrous $46 a week. That was my beginning salary. I worked for Parks and Forestry Division of Norfolk, and that's where I got a job. So the first 2 years of our marriage was not good. It was really horrible. Unbeliever. I'm still going out doing the same thing I did before I got married because I wanted my freedom. So, after the second year of marriage, I said, I really don't want to be married. I thought I did, but I don't like the responsibility. By this time, we had Lisa, my little girl. And so I'm going down and I'm going to join the Army and get out of this. I knew the Army would give me enough money to send home to pay for, my wife and baby to eat. So I went down to join the Army in downtown Norfolk on Bush Street, downtown. And, the recruiting officer, he had to be a Christian. I didn't know that he was, but he must have been, because 1967 was when the Vietnam War was booming. Wasn't it? 65, 66, 67, in that area? Anyway, he talked me out of it. He said, you got a responsibility at home. He said, if I put you in the Army, you're going to go to boot camp, and you're going to be shipped straight to Vietnam. And an 18-year-old with a rifle in his hand is stupid. So you're probably not going to come back. And he said, best thing for you to do is go back home and take care of your family and your little girl. And I did. I went back home. Well, by that time, I needed another car, so I bought a 1954 Chevrolet two-door car. And so a friend of mine asked me, said, Ken, why don't you and Sandy come over for dinner one night and we'll eat? Okay. So I went over there to his house and we ate dinner and blah, blah, blah. And he had a detached garage in the back. And we started drinking beer. And I said, you know what? I've always wanted a convertible. And so he said, well, we'll make you a convertible. So he had 2 axes and a hatchet and a ball-peen hammer. And you know what we did? We cut the top of that Chevrolet top off of that car at night out there in the garage banging around. And my wife came out there and looked at me and just shook her head and said, I can't believe you're that stupid. Well, I had a stupid portfolio, and that was another thing that I put in it. We cut the top off, and my wife has put up with me for some of the shenanigans in my whole life. I'll tell you, she stuck by me. Anyway, for 2 or 3 weeks, I had to drive her around in the rain in that car and no top, and it was so stupid. I mean, it wasn't a very pretty job, but it was functional. I had a convertible. So I finally got us another car, and things went on, and she started going to this little church in Fairmount Park, and I said, fine, if you want to go to church, that's fine. So she started going. By the way, she was raised up in the Church of Christ when she was a young girl, and she had some Christian ethics about her I didn't know anything about as far as Christian ethics. Sandy Lane was a good woman, a good girl, and so she married me. That was probably not good. But you know what? God takes the things that he hates, to produce the things he loves. And so she started going to that little church in Fairmount Park, and for about a month. And I saw some changes in her. We didn't fuss and fight like we normally did. I did the fussing and fighting, and she did the listening. So I knew something was different about her life, So anyway, I don't want to leave anything out here. Okay, I'm just going by a few notes here. Anyway, so across the street from my house, there was a man who lived over there named William Hughes, older gentleman. He was quite the fisherman. He owned a boat. Matter of fact, he owned Collie Avenue Marina. And he had a beautiful boat named the Dolphin. And I saw him across the street there in his garage. The door was open, and he was making bucktail lures. And he had fishing rods hanging down from the ceiling and all. I was watching him. So one day he came over, and he asked me if I'd like to go fishing with him. And I'm just, what am I now? 19? Yeah, I'm 19 years old. So I said, okay, great. I love to fish. And Mr. Hughes said, well, I'll make a deal with you, Ken. I'll take you fishing on Saturday if you'll come to church with me on Sunday. I said, no problem. I had no intentions of going. So I went fishing with him, his brother, and another guy on their boat. And when I got to the boat, where's the beer? Where's the stuff to, have a good time with? No beer. His wife had made us some sandwiches and some drinks and Cokes and Dr. Peppers and so forth and put them in the cooler. And you know what? I didn't think you could have a good time without getting half gassed up and stupid stuff and tearing your head up. I had the best time with those guys. They cut up at each other, told the funniest, stupidest jokes, and we just had a great time. And we caught a cooler full of fish. I mean, we went all the way over to the high level bridge, and we're fishing over there. And we came back, and Sunday morning about 8:30, I hear this. Who in the world's knocking on my door this time of the morning? I'm asleep. Yeah, I come to Mr. Hughes. Ken, I come to collect my promise. What? What promise? Told me yesterday you go to church with me today if I carried you fishing. I said, oh, man, if I don't go with him, what's going to happen? Will he take me fishing again? Nope. I'm thinking of the next fishing trip. I don't care about church. So anyway, I said, well, okay, I'll go. So my wife had been going to this little church, and I went to that church. And, man, I was miserable. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be at church. I didn't like it. I always thought that church was for kids and old women. But Mark's grandfather was preaching that Sunday. Tall, black hair. And I never heard stuff like that before. And he looked right at me with that long arm finger of his. And I thought that my wife had told him everything I'd ever done because he was preaching at me. The Holy Spirit was convicting me. So I said, if I ever get out of here, I'm not coming back. I did get out. And the following weekend, I went out to the Green Wheel and started drinking with a friend of mine. And we got to drinking, carrying on, and doing stupid stuff. Anyway, for the sake of the young men, young boys that are in here, I'm not going too far with this. But there was a girl in there that I had wanted to go out with at the Green Wheel, and she just blew me off. Now, I'm married. I got a wife at home with a baby at home. And she's sit there and waiting on me to come home, and sometimes I wouldn't come home till after the bars close. So I'm telling you this, and I'm embarrassed about it, but I'm giving you this information about me because I'm glorifying Christ, what he's done in my life. So that girl carried me home with her that night. And I'm not going into details, but nothing happened because something happened to me. There was something going on physically with me that things wasn't working. And that's as far as I'm going with that. So there. Anyway, I thought, what in the world is going on with me? I'm a strong, strapping young man. I didn't know what God was doing in my life, but he was really working on me. So I went back to church, and Mr. Hughes, because of that fishing trip, introduced me to Christ, so to speak. He took me to where the gospel was being preached. And I thought about what I was doing to my little girl and my wife and myself. This can't go on. It can't keep going on like this. I had no help at home, period, about how to be a daddy, how to be a father. I had no clue. So I went to church the following Sunday, and I don't know what Preacher Burden preached on, but Preacher Burden and I became so good friends later on in the years. Preacher Burden was not a guy that you could really get close to, but I was close to Preacher Burden. I mean, in church, Preacher Burden's all about business. But when we started riding motorcycles together, he was kind of like let your hair down a little bit when he got away from the church. And we become close and got friendly, and anyway, we had great times together. So I got saved. I didn't know what I was doing. The man said, come forward if you want to accept Christ as your Savior. Well, I wasn't scared of going to hell because I was too stupid to know what that was about. I wanted some help to find out how to be a better father and a better husband. That's what I wanted. And I got the benefit of not going to hell with wanting to know how to be a better daddy. And so I went forward, and some men surrounded me and helped me, you know. And be faithful in church, and you'll learn something. Come, come, come. And a lot of us couldn't do a lot of things, but you know what? All of us can be faithful. And if you'll come, you will learn, you know. And I did, and I started coming, and I couldn't do a lot of things, but I stayed faithful. And I could sing a little teeny bit, and Preacher Burden said, you ought to join the choir. You know, he wanted me. The more you get involved in church, the more faithful you'll become, you know, and the more you learn. So I started singing in the choir, and I kind of enjoyed it. And not that I could sing very well, but I started enjoying that. And I started growing little by little by little by little. I started growing. And we had a television ministry at one time, and Gateway was on TV. You know what? I got to sing on television. I was horrified, absolutely horrified. And I was so scared. And I knew I was on camera, like I am now. And I sang, and the producer said, we didn't get that very well. You need to do it again. I had to do it again. 3 times I did that before they got what they wanted. So anyway, I just want to say it's in your best interest to be sober, vigilant, and because why? Your adversary is after you. He wants you, and he is bound and determined to destroy you. So be vigilant. And let me read this real quick. He and his forces are always active, always looking for an opportunity to drag us down and drag us out of the fellowship with Christ. It's always in your best interest to fear the Lord, for this the beginning of wisdom. I'm not going to preach to you. I got some things I want to say real quick, and then I'm going to wind this up. My friend Joey here, I asked him to come with me this morning, and I appreciate Brother Sonny and Zach coming and his son coming with me this morning. By the way, we've been meeting every Saturday morning, 37 weeks in our Bible study together. We're going through the New Testament, and it's been good for us. And iron sharpens iron. So we're sharpening each other. 37 weeks we've met, and we're going to continue on until 52 weeks, I guess. My friend Joey's here with me this morning, and I witnessed to Joey for 25 years. He didn't want to hear it either. He kept blowing me off and blowing me off and blowing me off. But I didn't beat him over the head with the Bible. I was kind, and when I got a chance to sow a little seed, I'd throw a little seed out there, you know? So I'll tell you this real quick. Joey's version of this is much longer than mine. Joey was sitting at a deli shop on Norfolk Avenue in Virginia Beach eating lunch one day. And I know that the Spirit of the living God was working on his heart. And Joey, across the street was a church. If I get this wrong, you tell me. Joey was sitting there eating lunch, and he said to himself, he said, okay, God, if you're as big as Ken says you are, turn that cross around on top of that steeple. Turn it the opposite direction. He challenged God to do that. Tell him what happened.
Later, I went to eat, and I was pissed off when I got there. And more or less, I said, "Show me what you got, big boy. If you're real, do this." And 2 days later, I went in there and I sat down, and this is exactly what I heard. I heard, "Look up now, big boy." And I looked up, and that cross was facing me. And I called him up and asked him where he was. And he said, "You all right?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm all right. Where are you?" He said, "I'm home." And I said, "I'm on my way." And After him chasing me for that long, I gave in.
So Joey's been very faithful to the Lord since that day. But let me tell you something. God is real. And if you want him in your life, he will help you and he will bless you. Look, I'm not an educated guy, but God has given me more than I ever dreamed he'd ever give me. I've had some type of boat my whole life since I grew up around the water. And so I decided to do what Mr. Hughes did for me. Take a kid fishing. And you got an opportunity to talk to them on the boat. Where are they going? You know? So I did that, and I've taken a lot of folks fishing, and I've shared with them my story. And so, you know, if you're here without Christ, look, you know how this world is today. I don't have to tell you. It's winding down. Christ is going to come back and get his church. I don't know when it's going to be, but I just want to be found faithful when he gets here. I want him to say, well done, Ken. Did a good job. And he might look at me and say, man, I had a time with you. Oh, one other thing, real quick, and then I'm done. My wife and I ministered in St. Croix for a few years on the island. And I was in the back of the building one day, and it had rained, and I was standing in water up to my ankles. And I don't know how island people don't do things very efficiently, a lot of them. So the heating and air conditioning guys were over there, and they disconnected an air-conditioned big unit on the building and just pulled the wires out and put another unit up there and left the wires laying down in the water, 220. So I didn't know what they were. I'm back there cleaning up, and I grabbed those wires, and they touched. And all of a sudden, I'm holding these, standing in water. Kaboom! Flash went off, and the power goes out. Pastor was in his study, and I went in there, and I said, you're not going to believe what just happened. He looked at me, and I told him, and his face was white as it could be. He called one of the island or electrician guys, and they came over there, disconnected that. 4 times God saved my life. I could have been fried to a crisp, but he let me live. Maybe he let me live to come talk to you and you and you and you about the mighty power of God. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you.
I couldn't help but like tear up because I've watched him, right? And there's also a story that I don't think you shared, but Preacher Burden helped you get your first truck to be able to start the painting business that was extremely successful. And like Pastor Mark has already mentioned, and I'm not going to belabor, but man, what he said was spot on. What we do matters for eternity, for us, but it also matters for the next generation. And so Pastor Mark mentioned Morgan. He works nights, and so morning is not his thing, but he leads our Monday night group. But we've got some other men's groups leaders in here. George has ball games today. Terrence is, I'm sorry, let me do this. Morgan is our Monday night group leader. George is our Wednesday night group leader. And then I'm going to ask the other group leaders to stand up real quick. Ian is our Saturday late morning group leader. So if you like sleeping in on Saturday morning, 8:45 right here. Jonathan is our Saturday morning 7 o'clock group leader. And then Terrence is our 7 p.m. Thursday night. You're like, all right, so how am I going to remember all that? Restore.church/groups has all our groups, but Restore.church/men, where you registered for men's breakfast, it has all of the men's groups listed right there with the times, the days, everything. It's super simple. So our challenge this morning is take what you've heard. Talk to Mr. Lane before you leave, but take what you've heard and implement it. Get involved in a group.